The scarf wasn't mine. It was the first thing I saw when I stepped through the front door after 4 days away. A thin, stylish men's scarf curled up like a sleeping snake on our entryway mat. I bent down, picked it up, and turned it over in my hands. It was soft, maybe cashmere, with muted earth tones and a designer label I didn't recognize. Definitely not my style. Definitely not from my closet. I stood there for a minute, staring at it like it would explain itself. Lindsay came around the corner from the kitchen, barefoot, sipping something from a wine glass. "Oh," she said casually, her eyes landing on the scarf. "Yeah, my cousin Logan came to town. He crashed here one night while you were in Denver. He must have dropped that." Her tone was light, offhand, like it didn't matter. But something about how quickly she said it, how the explanation rolled out without hesitation, made me pause. "Your cousin," I echoed. "Yeah. Remember him? From the wedding in Portland? Tall, shaggy hair. Always wears those ridiculous boots." I nodded slowly. I vaguely remembered meeting a Logan at her cousin's wedding, but we'd barely exchanged a few words. Lindsay didn't talk about him much, and as far as I knew, they weren't close. "Did he stay the whole weekend?" I asked. "No, just one night. He was passing through. We caught up, had some wine. Then he crashed on the couch." She took another sip. "I didn't want to bug you about it while you were traveling." I nodded again, slower this time. She smiled, turned, and walked back into the kitchen. Just like that, the conversation was over. Or at least it was for her. But not for me. That night I couldn't sleep. I wasn't angry. I wasn't suspicious in the way that eats you alive. It was more subtle, a dissonance like hearing a familiar song played in the wrong key. Something didn't line up. The scarf was one thing, sure, but it was her reaction that kept replaying in my mind. There was no flicker of confusion when she saw it. No real surprise. She knew exactly what it was, and exactly what to say. The next morning, I woke up early and threw in a load of laundry. I'd barely unpacked my suitcase, but the habit helped me reset after work trips. As I sorted through the clothes, my hand paused on a crisp, light blue dress shirt I didn't recognize. It wasn't mine. Not even close. The collar was smaller than I wear, the sleeves too short, and the tag said a size down. I don't think I've ever owned a shirt that buttoned right to the top. I held it up and stared at it like it might morph into something familiar. Didn't. "Hey!" I called, trying to keep my voice level. "Whose shirt is this?" Lindsay peeked around the bedroom door, tying her hair up in a messy bun. She squinted at the shirt for a beat. "Oh," she said again. "Logan's. He left that behind too. I figured I'd wash it and mail it to him." I waited for something else. For her to step into the room, laugh about how forgetful he was, maybe give me a weird cousin story. But she didn't. Just that same easy tone. That same nonchalance. She turned away, heading back into the bathroom. And maybe I'm reading into things, but in that moment, it felt like she was walking away from more than just the laundry. Over the next few days, I tried to forget about it. I told myself I was being paranoid. People forget stuff. Her cousin might be eccentric. And yet, the unease lingered like a dull headache. Something wasn't sitting right. The next time we had dinner together, I casually brought it up again. We were eating on the back patio, the air still warm from the day. "Did Logan ever reach out about his stuff?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "The scarf or the shirt?" She didn't even look up from her plate. "Nah, he's terrible at following up. I'll probably text him this weekend." I nodded. "Mind if I drop it off next time I'm in the city?" She paused, fork halfway to her mouth. "He's actually back on the road already. Headed south. He moves around a lot." And that was that. She went back to eating. The conversation hit a wall like it always did when I nudged too close to something she didn't want to discuss. I couldn't put my finger on it at the time, but the ease in her voice, the way she always had an answer ready, didn't sound like someone caught off guard. It sounded like someone who had practiced. Maybe it should have ended there. Maybe I should have let it go, trusted her, chalked it all up to a weird coincidence. But the more I tried to convince myself, the more the doubt took root. One afternoon, a week later, I checked the coat closet. I don't even know why. Maybe I thought I'd find the scarf again, or maybe I just needed to make sure it was gone. I found our jackets, a pair of her boots, and a cologne sample still sealed in a glossy department store bag tucked way in the back. It wasn't mine. I don't wear cologne. I didn't mention it to her. I didn't say a word. Not yet. I just sat with it, this slow, creeping sense that something was shifting beneath me, too subtle to name, too loud to ignore. You don't notice the silence at first. It doesn't crash into your life like a door slammed shut, it just sort of drifts in, fills the empty corners, and settles. That's how it was with Lindsay. After the scarf and the shirt, things didn't blow up. No fight, no confrontation. Just distance. Quiet. A strange, unspoken tension that thickened the air between us. She wasn't colder exactly. She was still polite. She still smiled. But something about her had shifted. The warmth that used to live in her gaze gone. Her laughter, which once came so easily, now felt measured, almost transactional. She wasn't being mean, but she wasn't being present either. She was there and not there. It started small. I'd come home from work and find her in the kitchen, earbuds in, chopping vegetables, listening to music I didn't recognize. She used to play our playlists out loud, songs we'd curated together during long drives and lazy Sundays. But those disappeared from her profile. I couldn't even find them anymore. Like they'd been erased. At first, I thought it was just stress. Work had been crazy for both of us. Deadlines, late nights, never enough time to talk. I asked if she was okay once during dinner. She shrugged and said she was just tired. You've been working hard. I get it, I said, trying to reach for something. We should take a weekend off soon. Just us. Yeah, she replied, eyes on her phone. That'd be nice. But she never brought it up again. And when I tried a week later, she said she had too much going on, meetings, a team event, some new project that could be big. I didn't push. I didn't want to be needy. But the excuses kept coming. She started keeping her phone face down on every surface. Always. On the couch, at the table, even on the nightstand. It was subtle at first. A habit, maybe? But it became ritual. She never left it unattended. If I walked into the room, she'd casually swipe it into her lap. One night, I caught her typing furiously under the covers while she thought I was asleep. Her screen lit her face just enough for me to see the expression, focused, slightly smiling, completely absorbed. When I shifted under the blanket, she clicked the screen off and turned her back to me. The next morning, I asked her who she'd been texting. Oh, just Natalie. She was venting about her boyfriend again. She didn't elaborate. Just sipped her coffee and scrolled through headlines. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. But something was off. Natalie was great, sure, but she wasn't the 2 a.m. text novella type. Not like that. I started noticing other things. She stopped asking about my day. Used to be, I'd come home and she'd pepper me with questions, clients, coworkers, even dumb stories from lunch. Now, I'd talk and she'd nod, hum, maybe toss in a half smile if I was lucky. But her eyes were always somewhere else. Sometimes she wouldn't be home when I got back. No note, no text. Just gone. I'd wait, wondering if I'd missed something until she strolled in hours later smelling like expensive soap and something unfamiliar, maybe sandalwood. I never wore sandalwood. When I asked where she'd been, the answers were always vague. Oh, just out running errands. With who? Just me. Or, gym. Since when do you go to the gym at 8 p.m.? I needed to clear my head. It felt like she was talking at me, not to me. Like she was performing the motions of a relationship, checking off a list. Say hello, make eye contact, cook dinner, ask one question, leave room. But it wasn't real. There was no curiosity. No care. Just maintenance. One night, she came home late, almost midnight. I was on the couch, half asleep with a rerun playing in the background. She slipped in quietly, thinking I'd be out. I sat up. Hey. She jumped slightly. Oh. You're still up. Yeah, I was waiting for you. Why? I was worried. She offered a tight smile. I told you I was going to be late. You said you had a meeting. This late. It ran long. And then I grabbed a drink. With who? She hesitated. Some of the team. Anyone I know? She shook her head. You wouldn't. That was the first time I felt it like a punch in the chest. The deliberate avoidance. The way she shut it down before I could ask anything real. It wasn't just distance anymore, it was deflection. That night, I lay in bed beside her and stared at the ceiling for hours. She turned away from me, curled tight, like a stranger occupying half my bed. I didn't reach for her. I couldn't. Something was happening. I didn't have proof, not yet. But I knew. And still, I said nothing. Instead, I started watching. I began noticing how often she touched her phone but never showed me anything. She had changed her lock screen to something abstract, just a pattern of blue and gray swirls. Her password used to be our anniversary date. I found that out the hard way when I tried to check the weather one morning and got locked out. "You changed your passcode?" I asked. She shrugged. "Company policy. We're doing two-factor stuff now." I wanted to argue, but I didn't. Just nodded, handed the phone back, and watched her tuck it into her pocket like it contained state secrets. Eventually, I stopped asking questions. What was the point? She wasn't going to tell me. Whatever she was doing, whoever she was with, she'd already decided I didn't need to know. One morning, I came downstairs to find her dressed to the nines. Blazer, heels, makeup done like she was headed to a gala instead of her office. "Big day?" I asked. She didn't even look up from her mirror. Just felt like dressing nice. That wasn't like her. She hated heels. I'd heard her curse stilettos to hell on more than one occasion. And yet, there she was, like she was going to meet someone who needed impressing. I stood in the doorway and watched her adjust her necklace. She didn't notice me. Or if she did, she didn't care. I don't remember what I said as she left. Probably something mundane. Drive safe or have a good one. Words we say out of habit when we're too scared to say what we really feel. She kissed me on the cheek. A mechanical peck. Then she was gone. I stared at the closed door for a long time after that. This wasn't just a rough patch. It wasn't stress. It wasn't just tired. Something had changed. Something real. And I was starting to feel like I was the last one to notice. The weekend trip was supposed to be a reset. A quick getaway to the coast, me, a few colleagues, a handful of meetings, and just enough downtime to decompress. Lindsay had encouraged it, even packed my bag for me. "You've been stretched too thin," she said, brushing my cheek with the back of her hand. "Go clear your head." So I went. And then the storm hit. Torrential rain, high winds, and road closures. My Saturday presentation was cut short, and by noon everyone was scrambling to reschedule. I didn't tell Lindsay I was coming home early. I thought it'd be a nice surprise. A return to spontaneity. Something light in all this growing gray. By dusk, I was back in our driveway. The porch light was on, a soft yellow glow behind the curtains. Familiar. Safe. At least, that's what I told myself before I walked up to the door and found it locked. From the inside. That was weird. We never used the deadbolt unless we were both home for the night. I knocked, waited, knocked again. No answer. I called her phone, straight to voicemail. That's when my heart started pounding. I took a step back and looked at the house, the soft light still spilling from the upstairs windows, a flicker of movement behind the blinds. She was home. But she wasn't opening the door. I didn't have my keys, left them in my travel duffel in the trunk. So I walked around to the side yard, climbed up the trellis beside the garage, and hoisted myself onto the second-floor balcony. It was something I hadn't done since we first moved in back when we thought climbing balconies was romantic. The glass door was unlocked. Inside, the house felt still but recently alive. The kind of stillness that settles right after something's been hurriedly cleaned up. There was a faint clink of glass from the kitchen and the faintest trace of something musky. Not a scent I recognized. Not her usual perfume. Not mine either. I walked through the living room scanning. A pair of wine glasses sat by the sink, still wet, like they'd just been rinsed. One of them had a faint lipstick smudge. The couch cushions were fluffed but uneven. A throw blanket was bunched at one corner like someone had leapt off in a rush. Then I saw it. A gym pass. Left on the console table near the door. Bright red lanyard, laminated card. The name printed across the front, Colin Mathers. I didn't know a Colin. Lindsay never mentioned a Colin. And I knew every one of her coworkers by name, by face, even by weird work habits she loved to rant about. This wasn't a name I recognized. And yet, his gym pass was sitting in our house. My hands were shaking now. I walked upstairs. The hallway was dim, but the hum of the air purifier in the bedroom was unmistakable, set to high, louder than usual. It buzzed with a white noise intensity that almost drowned out my own thoughts. Our bedroom door was cracked open. I pushed it gently. Nothing looked out of place at first glance. The bed was made or remade. Too perfectly. Sheets taut, pillows stacked, no signs of use. And yet, the faintest dent in the duvet on her side. A wrinkle on the edge like someone had sat there. Or knelt. But it was the air itself that felt wrong. Too crisp. Artificial. Like something had been scrubbed from it. I stood there for a long time, unsure what I expected to see. Then I remembered the camera. A few weeks ago, after a break-in happened on our street, I installed a hallway cam near the stairs. Just a precaution, I said. Lindsay wasn't thrilled, said it felt invasive. But I insisted. She eventually shrugged it off. I hadn't checked it once since. Now I bolted to my office. The camera feed uploaded to a secure folder on my desktop. I opened the most recent file Friday night. I scrubbed through the footage, fast-forwarding past the hours when the house was quiet. Then I saw it. Timestamp. Friday, 10:13 p.m. The front door opened. Lindsay stepped inside, wearing the black sweater dress I hadn't seen in months. Her hair was done up, her cheeks flushed, eyes wide. She looked electric, alive, like the version of her I hadn't seen in weeks. And right behind her, a man followed. Tall, slim build, sharp jawline, short dark hair. He stepped in close, too close. She turned toward him, whispered something, then leaned in and kissed him. Not a polite peck. A slow, deliberate kiss. Like they were used to doing this. Like it wasn't new. I paused the video, my hand trembling. I pressed play again. She took his hand, led him upstairs. The footage ended there. The hallway camera only showed the stairs. The rest, the bedroom, the sounds, the details I had to imagine. I shut the laptop, sat in the dark for I don't know how long. Everything in my chest felt hollow and tight all at once. I couldn't breathe, but I also couldn't move. I just kept seeing that image, her lips on his, her fingers curled around his wrist, her leading him upstairs like it was her second nature. I thought about the scarf, the shirt, the phone always face down, the silence, the excuses, the perfume, the gym pass. It was all right there, laid out like clues in a puzzle I never wanted to solve. She hadn't just distanced herself from me. She'd replaced me, quietly, strategically, like phasing out a job title until no one noticed it missing. I didn't confront her. I didn't storm into the bedroom. I didn't yell. I walked downstairs, picked up the gym pass, and slipped it into my coat pocket. Then I pulled a USB drive from my desk drawer and copied the camera footage onto it. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I needed it. Proof. Not just for others, for myself. To know I hadn't imagined it. That I hadn't gone crazy. On the kitchen counter I placed the USB. Next to it I left my wedding ring. And beneath both, a handwritten note. No anger. No poetry. Just 10 words. I know. I saw everything. I'm done. Zach. Then I walked out the door, not looking back once. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't punch a wall or leave tire marks down the street. I just walked away. It's strange how something so life-altering can happen with so little noise. That night, I stayed at a hotel across town. A simple, business-class place with beige walls and a humming air conditioner that masked the echo of my thoughts. I didn't sleep much. I kept seeing her face in the video, lit by the foyer light, eyes locked on someone else. The next morning I woke early, sat in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the mornings we'd spent in that house. How many of them had been a lie? When did the rot start? When did she decide I was no longer enough? I checked my phone. A single message from Lindsay had come in around 2:37 a.m. Where are you? Please come home. I didn't reply. I took my time that morning, got dressed slowly, grabbed a coffee from a nearby cafe, watched people on the street, couples holding hands, parents wrangling toddlers, a man in a business suit talking into a headset, all of them living in worlds that, for a moment, felt foreign to me, intact worlds. Then I went back. I didn't expect her to be gone, but part of me hoped she would be, that maybe she'd taken the hint, left quietly, like she'd arrived. She hadn't. Her car was in the driveway. Lights were on. Curtains drawn. I stepped inside. The air was still. My note and the USB were gone. The ring was gone too. But she didn't greet me. Just a note on the counter in return. Please talk to me. No signature. Just 5 words that suddenly felt small. I moved through the house in silence. Every room felt different. Heavier. Her presence was still everywhere. Her coat on the chair, her coffee mug in the sink, a pair of flats left haphazardly by the stairs. It looked like a home, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. I walked into our bedroom and started packing her things. Not out of spite, not to punish her, but because it was time. I moved mechanically, drawer by drawer, shelf by shelf. Her clothes into boxes, her jewelry carefully wrapped, even the knickknacks she'd collected over the years. I didn't leave anything out. I packed the small things, too. The notes we used to leave each other, birthday cards, a dried flower she'd once saved from an anniversary dinner. Each one went into a box labeled with her name. I didn't cry. Maybe I was still too numb. Maybe the pain hadn't hit its depth yet. Or maybe there was nothing left to feel. I didn't throw anything away except for one thing. On the top shelf of the closet was a photo collage I had made for our second anniversary. It was a mosaic of our relationship, movie tickets, *TS, concert wristbands, receipts from favorite restaurants. All the tiny moments we once thought were worth remembering. I took it outside, built a small fire in the backyard, and I watched it burn. The flames licked the edges of the frame, curling the corners of photos, reducing our smiles and memories to smoke and ash. I stood there until the last embers died. That night, the messages started. First, it was confusion. Can we please talk? I don't know what you think you saw, but it's not what you think. Then panic. Zach, please? I messed up. I know. But we can fix this. We have to. Don't throw everything away. Then desperation. Please. I'll do anything. Just talk to me. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Anything I said would invite her back in. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't even sure I ever would be. Instead, I loaded her boxes into my trunk, drove them to her father's house 2 hours away. We hadn't seen him much in recent years, things had always been complicated there. But I knew she'd go there eventually. Or maybe she already had. I left the boxes on the porch, taped a note to the top. These belong with her. Z. Then I drove away, not looking back once. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't soothe, it presses in, fills every crack, echoes in every room. I stayed at a friend's place for a bit. Told him only what he needed to know. He didn't ask questions. Just handed me a spare key and a beer. You good? He asked once. I nodded. He didn't believe me, but he didn't push. I went through the motions. Work. Sleep. Eat. Repeat. But I didn't feel like a person. I felt like an echo of one. Then, one afternoon, I remembered something. An old file. Months before all this, I'd been testing a backup mic for my home office, something I could clip to a jacket when recording notes. I had forgotten to turn it off one night. Later, when I went to transfer files, I found a strange audio clip. I almost deleted it, but something made me listen. It was Lindsay, talking on the phone, laughing. And then, Zach's such a sweet guy. But God, sometimes he's just clueless. Like, if I wanted to get away with murder, he'd probably help me hide the body before asking questions. Laughter on the other end. No, seriously, he's like this golden retriever. Loyal, patient, but totally oblivious. I'd laughed it off at the time. Brushed it aside. Told myself it was just venting, harmless teasing. Now, I played it again. And this time, it didn't feel harmless. It felt cold. Calculated. Like she'd known, even then, how easy it would be to lie to me. I saved the file. Didn't know why. But it felt important now. A few days later, word got back to me she was throwing a small party to celebrate her new job. Her dream gig. She hadn't told me she'd even been applying. That didn't surprise me anymore. What did surprise me was how many of our mutual friends were planning to attend. People who still didn't know. People who might have heard half her side about stress, about growing apart, but not the truth. So I made a decision. I emailed the audio clip to a friend of hers. Someone who always had a foot in both camps. I didn't explain it. Just wrote. Play this whenever she gives her thank you speech. That night, I didn't attend. Didn't need to. But the texts rolled in. Dude. What the hell? She freaked out. Like, full meltdown. People left. It was bad. I didn't smile. Didn't cheer. I just sat on a park bench, watching the sun dip below the skyline, letting the final remnants of our old life fall away like leaves on wind. That was the moment it all became real, not the scarf, or the camera, or the footage. But this, the silence after a truth has finally been spoken. The hush that follows the fall of a house built on lies. And for the first time since it all began, I didn't feel small. I felt free. After the party, the silence changed. It wasn't peaceful anymore, it was sharp. Edged. Like the air itself had opinions. The messages from Lindsay didn't stop, but their tone had morphed. No more cheerful exclamation points, no more soft guilt-laced apologies. These were desperate now. Erratic. Panicked. Why would you do that? You humiliated me. In front of my boss. This isn't who you are, Zach. Please. Can we talk? I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say, and even if there had been, I had no interest in comforting her shame. That recording wasn't revenge. It was reality. A truth she couldn't bury beneath a curated smile and half-truths. She had spent months rewriting the story of our marriage to anyone who would listen, how we'd grown distant, how I'd become unreachable. I suppose she never thought I'd speak. But I had. And I didn't need to raise my voice to be heard. Her coworkers knew now. Her friends, too. The clip spread quietly, whispered between sips of coffee and shared glances across meetings. Her new job, the one she'd bragged about landing, had suddenly grown colder. She wasn't fired. But the energy shifted. People hesitated before including her. Invitations dried up. That wasn't my doing. That was the weight of her own words. Afterward, I stayed off social media. Avoided shared circles. Deleted photos, unfollowed names. The timeline of our life unraveled with every click. There's something disorienting about deleting a photo you remember vividly. A dinner. A beach day. Her hand in mine. Gone in a second. Still, I didn't stop. That week, I focused on closure. Not the kind you wait for, but the kind you build yourself. I opened a storage bin in my friend's basement, the one where I'd been crashing for weeks, and dug out a box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were old notebooks, drafts of stories I'd never finished, birthday cards from my mom, and a small black case I'd nearly forgotten about. The recorder. It was heavier than I remembered. Cold in my hand. The same one that had captured Lindsay's voice months ago, the night she called me a golden retriever. The same one that had caught her tone just a shade too sharp, her laughter just a bit too mean. I had ignored that clip back then. Shrugged it off. Told myself I was overthinking. That she needed to vent. That I was being too sensitive. I sat on the couch and played it again. Her voice filled the room. No, seriously. He's so loyal, it's pathetic. I could walk in wearing another guy's shirt and he'd probably compliment the fabric. Laughter again. It's not like he'd ever figure it out. He still thinks our anniversary playlist disappeared because of a Spotify glitch. I paused the audio, leaned back, and exhaled. It wasn't the betrayal that got me this time. It was how sure she'd been that I wouldn't do anything about it. She thought I'd stay silent. Stay loyal. Stay soft. And maybe I would've. If she hadn't made me disappear in my own life. I clicked over to a folder I'd started compiling. *TS. Messages. Receipts. Not for legal reasons, I wasn't after a courtroom battle. I didn't need to win anything. But I wanted a record. A narrative that made sense. Something to revisit if I ever doubted myself again. In that folder, I added the final piece, a photo of the USB on the counter taken moments before I left it. Just to remember the point when I drew the line. A week after the party, a mutual friend reached out. Her name was Kara. We weren't especially close, but she'd been around game nights, birthdays, backyard BBQs. She messaged me late after midnight. Hey, I know this is weird, but I just wanted to say. I'm sorry for believing her version. I stared at the screen. She continued. You didn't deserve what she did. And that clip? That wasn't just a mistake. That was who she is now. I hope you're doing okay. I didn't reply right away. I didn't know how. But it meant something. Maybe not closure. But affirmation. Proof that the truth doesn't need to be loud to be heard. Still, the messages from Lindsay kept coming. One day, I opened them all. Just to see. They'd grown longer, unraveling paragraphs full of shifting tones, regret, anger, nostalgia, manipulation. Sometimes she quoted old songs. Sometimes she recited memories. She wanted me to remember how we danced in the rain on our second anniversary. How I'd once held her hair back while she sobbed through a panic attack. How she made me promise after a nightmare that I'd never leave, no matter what. But those memories didn't have power anymore. Not like they used to. Because now every good thing she reminded me of had a shadow. That dance in the rain? 2 weeks later, she canceled my birthday dinner because work ran late. That panic attack? She used it in an argument later as proof that she had too much on her plate to deal with my needs. That promise not to leave? She'd already left. She just hadn't packed her bags yet. I archived every message without replying. Eventually, she tried calling. I let it ring. Over and over. She even showed up once. It was a Saturday. I was walking back from the hardware store trying to fix a leaky faucet in the tiny rental I'd found. She was sitting on the steps. Waiting. Her eyes were swollen, her posture small. I just want 5 minutes, she said, standing. No, I replied. Calm. Final. She looked like she might speak again, but I shook my head. I'm not here for this. Not anymore. and I walked past her. Into the house. Closed the door. She knocked once. Twice. Then silence. I watched her from the window as she got into her car and drove off. For the first time, I didn't feel shaken. Just resolved. That night, she left one last message. She didn't text it. She left it in a box outside my door. Inside, old photos. A worn sweater I used to love. A letter. I didn't read it. I slid the box into the storage closet next to the suitcase of books I hadn't unpacked yet. Some things don't need to be open to be over. The next morning, I deleted her number. Not out of anger. Out of necessity. It was time to reclaim the silence, not as something she left behind, but as something I chose for myself. That silence? It was mine now. And in it, I found something stronger than revenge or regret. I found myself again. After the final message, she went quiet. No more texts. No more calls. No more surprise appearances on my doorstep. Just absence. The space she once occupied gradually collapsed inward like a room emptied of furniture, strangely hollow but easier to breathe in. It should have felt like peace. But grief doesn't exit that cleanly. It lingers, sometimes whispering when you're doing fine, sometimes shouting when you least expect it. The kind of grief not just for a person, but for the version of yourself that once loved them without question. I didn't open her letter. I kept it though. Tucked away in the back of my closet, buried beneath things I no longer reached for: old journals, expired warranties, a forgotten pair of hiking boots. Maybe I'll read it someday. Maybe I won't. Closure, I've learned, doesn't always come in envelopes. Instead, I turned my attention to living. 2 months later, I moved into a smaller apartment on the quieter edge of the city. No shared walls, no framed photos of a life that had dissolved. Just clean lines, open light, and silence that wasn't heavy anymore. It was peace, finally. I took up running again, nothing serious, just early mornings with my breath fogging the air and my feet pounding against cold pavement. I enrolled in a photography class. Bought a used Nikon and started seeing the world in frames, shadows, and contrast, the beauty in forgotten corners. It felt good to create something again, even if it was just for me. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years began to reach out. Some had heard whispers of what happened. Others didn't mention it at all. They just invited me out for drinks, or sent memes, or asked how I'd been. Slowly, I let them back in. I didn't date. Not because I was afraid, but because I was rebuilding. Piece by piece. I didn't want to hand someone the rubble. I wanted to meet them when I'd already started laying new foundation. Sometimes I still thought about her. I'd pass someone in a store who wore her perfume, or hear a song she once hummed under her breath, and it would hit me like a wave. But it always receded. And each time, it took less of me with it. What surprised me most was how normal life felt again eventually. There was no big moment, no dramatic epiphany. Just the slow return of laughter, the quiet joy of waking up without dread, the lightness that came from knowing I no longer had to pretend. I didn't need to wonder who she was texting. I didn't need to decode the silence. I didn't need to fight for something that was already gone. In that absence, I found space. Space to breathe, to heal, to grow. And somewhere in that stillness, I realized I wasn't just surviving her betrayal. I was outgrowing it. She had collapsed under the weight of her own choices. I didn't need to help her up. I didn't need to prove anything to her. I only needed to live better than I did when I was trying to keep us both afloat. I chose peace. And that, more than anything, was the closure I'd been looking for all along.